Hello. It's Sunday, March 3rd at 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time in the afternoon, and we have a lot to talk about today. This is going to be a fact-filled live stream. I have lots of questions to answer from folks on Ravelry, and you can ask questions here live too. So the rule is, if you want to ask me a question in the chat, be sure to put the word question in all caps. That makes it easy for me to find. It's okay to chit chat with each other. I love it. I love reading it later on when I go back and review over this. It's a lot of fun. There are people here from everywhere. It's just a really unique community that we have here. And if you do ask me a question in the chat and I miss it, just restate it and put question. Don't say, oh, you missed my question or my question's up above, because then I got to scroll through all the questions. It's really hard for me to find it and talk at the same time. So just restate it, put the word question in all caps and restate your question. So let's see who we've got on here so far, okay? So Sandra Moore, and she was the first one on to post. Hello. By the way, I'm feeling much better. On Wednesday, I had to cancel. I felt great when I woke up in the morning, and I sat up on the edge of my bed to get up and go to the bathroom, and the world started spinning, and that ruined the whole day. I spent the rest of the day in bed spinning. Next day, I woke up fine. So I guess my body needed to rest that day because I wasn't able to get up. So there's Teresa Brown. And Scott, hello, Scott, Carol, Eric, Anne Tremoliers from France. Hello, Anne, and she helps out with the putting some of the subtitles on my videos in French for me. Thank you, Anne. Claudia, Francoise from France. She's from Lyon, France, and she translates my huge documents into French for us. So we need to all say thank you, Francois. And believe me, I am not easy to work with because I wait till the very last minute to do everything. That's just how I am. I guess I would be one of those people that's an on-time person. I get everything done, but just on time. It's not a week early. And sometimes that can be difficult for the people that I work with, but that's how I function the best. And that's just, I have to go with it. So Jay Hansen, Aline, Mary Inman, Bonnie Davis, Janice Mason, Julie Hertel, Susan McBride, Sherry Cornick, Deborah Cisneros, Champ Smith, Kelly Mycat, Luana Hendricks, Lorraine Lapolo, Claudio Bueno, hello, Michelle Forbes. It just jumped up on me. It does that, you know. Kathy Trakowska from Melbourne, Joyce Nugent, Fatima Dehan, hello, Renee, Nano and Daniel Payette, Lisa Quiltsalat, Evelyn, Diana Danko. Now, Diana Danko is the one that does the timestamps for these live streams, so thank her too. And she's very timely with that, and I really, really appreciate it a lot. Francine Fritchett, Claudia Cano, and let's see, that's where I left off up there. S.K. Hoyt, Signa Williams, Carol, and more, and Charles. Hello, Charles. Monique, Diana Aubrey, Leslie Dunn, Pat Valenzo. Okay. Now, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to start by answering the questions from Ravelry first, and then I'll go into your questions. We're going to be talking about the yoke a lot today, and I have a lot of information to give you, and I think you're going to really, really like this. So the first question from Ravelry, question number 16, is from Roger. He says, Suzanne, I've always shied away from yoke sweater projects because the neck openings are often so large. Well, some of the things I'm going to talk about today will dispel that for you. You can make the neck opening any size you want as long as it fits over your head. That's the limiting factor. Next question is from Demetria. I haven't seen her on here yet. Demetria, are you on here? She'll be on here. She wants to know if I'm going to make a video on installing a zipper, and yes, I am. It's on my to-do list, and it might be real soon. Then we have from Owls and Swan. She says, I am new to doing a knit along with you, but have been knitting for approximately 57 years. I loved watching your ITAG cardigan and am participating in the ITAG-Yoke. She wants to insert inverted pleats at the bottom front of her sweater, and she wants to know if you can do that top down. Yes, you can. You can do that top down, and we'll talk about that. Just remind me later on when we get to the body of the sweater, okay? That'll be in a few weeks. And this is from iMargaret73, and she has two questions. One's on the wristlet, that little bonus pattern that I sent out to you for the people that purchased the ITAG-Yoke. She wants to know if she can do it in sock yarn. You can do it in any yarn you want. And it does not have to be in the colors that I listed. I listed several colors there, and the samples were done in several colors. You can use just 2 colors if you want. So I included 2 charts with that. One is the color chart, and another one is a black and white chart. So you can substitute any colors you want on the black and white chart, and you can use any weight of yarn. It will change the size of it, of course, but I think it'll work. And it's a great little project to practice stranded knitting and steeking. That's what it's all about, something little that you can steek. She has a second question, and it's about the workshops, the worksheet, and the measuring on the video that I sent out, and the worksheet that's in the handout. And she is comparing, what she's doing is comparing the measurements that I asked you to get with the measurements listed in custom Jean Frost custom knit. Now, you got to keep in mind, these are all set-in sleeves. So the measurements she's getting in here are for set-in sleeves. The measurings I'm having you get are for a yoke. I love this book, though, because on page, this is one of my favorite books for custom fitting, is on page 3 and 2 and 3. It does tell you how to get your measurements, and it lists slightly different measurements than what I asked you to get, but that's because these are all, if you can see them, are all set in sleeve type things. But what I really like, this is where I first learned that your body size, your arm and your bust might fit in 2 different sizes. Just because your bust is one size doesn't mean that your arms are going to be the same size. So that's where I first started figuring that out. So we will use all the measurements that I had you take, and we probably won't use more measurements than that. So I hope that answers that. This is from Jaw 1045. She says, I currently have a 36 by 36 blocking frame covered with batting and gingham. Is that too porous for blocking? Nope, it's not too porous. You can't get too porous for blocking. I prefer non-porous surface, but when I say non-porous surface, I mean I'm not putting a towel down first. A lot of people put a towel down on their blocking surface, and the towel ends up absorbing a lot of water and holding it. It causes everything to take a lot longer to dry. If you're putting it on a net or something, I've seen those blocking things that hold your work up. They're actually for drying sweaters. They're really cool. You can use those for blocking too, where it's just over a mesh, and so the air can get it from both sides. Those are really cool. Okay, next question. This is from Roger again, and this is really a good question. He says, you recently mentioned your husband's favorite sweater, simple, plain, and steeked. I searched your Ravelry page and didn't see it. Would you mind showing it? Yes, and I have 2 of his sweaters out to show you. This is way before I got on Ravelry. These sweaters are like 20 years old, but they were both steeked. So they were knit as a tube from the bottom up. But it doesn't really matter. You could knit them from the bottom down as a tube. So here's, this one's black, and I know it's hard to see, but here's the neck. This is acrylic yarn. And this has been washed in the washer and dried in the dryer many, many times. There's the arm. Can you see it? Looks good. Looks fine, doesn't it? So I knitted this up as a tube all the way up to the top of the shoulder. And then I reinforced where the armhole was going to be. I didn't even add extra stitches for steeking. I knew nothing about it. I just used my imagination. I used my sewing machine, and I sewed around the arm where I wanted the opening to be. And I sewed twice, like you do when you're sewing something that you're reinforcing it when you're making clothes. So here is the inside. And I even sewed it with white thread. Can you see the white threads? Let's see how you can see that. Let me turn my light on here. Maybe this will help. Can you see the white threads? That's from my sewing machine. They're kind of a little bit lost, and here's the cut edges. Can you see all the cut edges where I just cut down there? And this has never come out. And like I said, it's been through the washer and dryer several times. Here's another sweater that I knit after that one. This one's alpaca. Hot, 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 hot. Same thing. I used kind of a basket weave stitch. See that? And I knitted it in a tube all the way up. This is for my husband. And then I didn't add any extra steek stitches. I didn't do anything in preparation, nothing different. I just sewed it on my sewing machine. I'll show you the inside. This one I did not use white yarn. I matched the yarn, but you can see the cut edge. I sewed it twice on the sewing machine, like an 1/8 inch apart, the seam, and across the bottom. And then I just cut it. And then I picked up stitches and worked the arm down from there. And this has been worn lots and lots of times. You can see the pilling on it. And I'm holding it up by the sleeve right now, full weight on the sleeve. It has never come out. And it looks nice and tidy. This is way before I went through the Master Hand Knitting program. It looks good. So does that answer your question, Roger, about steeking? And the one was in acrylic yarn. And both of those are like in bulky weight yarn. That's not little yarn. Okay, next question. Mary Jan Jim. There used to be a thread for suggestions for instructional videos. Okay, she wants me to make a video about after you cut the steek, you can do an I-cord edge and put in a zipper just the length of the yoke. She wants to do like a tab on the front. And we'll talk about that. Yeah, I'm going to save this out and I can talk about that and I can make a video on that too. Okay. And Roger's on here. Yay, Roger. Hi. Good. I'm glad you got to see those. My husband likes them too. He wears them a lot. I've knit him many more sweaters. Those were the first two that I knit for him. Okay, I'm saving that question. And this is from Mary Jan Jim again. I don't know if the cut in the steek for this quarter zip. Okay, so what she's asking is she wants to put a tab or like a Henley, but a Henley is where it overlaps and you have buttons. She just wants to put a cut right here and put I-cord on each end and put a little zipper right there. That's how she wants to do the front of her yoke. Yes, that is possible to do. And you can do it with steeking or with not steeking by knitting back and forth, depending on what your overall design is on your yoke. If you're going to steek, you're going to allow the steek stitches. I allow at least 7, and you might want to do 9. This is 7 here. And you can see it's not very wide. Those are 7 steek stitches. So it's yellow, red, yellow. So from yellow to yellow, that's 7. 5 would be too narrow, and I would not feel secure about doing 5. So you need to do 7. You could do 9. And that does not, and then when you get to the end of that part, you bind those off, and then you would cast on new stitches just below them for the width that you want. It does not have to be the same number as the steek. For example, if you're going to put I-cord down each side, you need to figure out how much space that's going to take in stitches. So it might take like 2 stitches on either side. So then you would want to cast on 4 stitches across the bottom and continue the rest of the body down. I hope that makes sense. We can talk more about that when we get to that portion, but it's coming up real soon. This is from Susie Maloney, and I got to meet her. Yay, at Stitches West. I got to meet a lot of people at Stitches West. It was really, really fun. Suzanne, I wanted to know what you think about single ply yarn for a sweater. Is it a good idea? What kind of sweater might you use it for? Lace or color, etc. And if it's a good idea for a sweater, where would you use it? And finally, what type of yarn do you recommend for a sweater? And do you have any suggestions for reading matter on the subject? Well, that opened a can of worms. Let's see. This is the #1 book you should start with if you want to learn about yarn and the properties of the yarn. This is by Clara Parks. She has a online forum that's called Knitter's Review that she's done for a long time. I don't know if she still does it, but she accumulated a ton of information from that. And what she does is she walks you through, she talks about all the different types of yarn, the different sources of the fiber, and then she does swatches and tells you the properties of that yarn. She talks about the properties and what you would use it for. This is a good starting point. I like this book. You'll learn a lot from it. Then she wrote another book, The Book of Wool. It is equally good. She talks about the different types of wool and their properties. And this is also very good to know if you want to do a lot of knitting or knit sweaters. She talks about the different breeds, the different qualities of the yarn, long staple versus short staple, the diameter, whether it's scratchy against your skin, not scratchy against your skin. Then this is another good book, In Sheep's Clothing. I like this one because it shows the actual, this is more for, it's for anybody that likes wool, but it talks about the different spins. You know how I've been talking about the spins, woolen versus worsted and plies and Z-ply and S-ply. You'll get all of that in here, and it'll show the different things that happen to the swatches based upon the spinning. Then it shows the actual, these are called, shoot, my brain went blank. The length, the staple, a staple. This is how long the fibers are for each type of sheep. So you can compare them, and the crimp. So merino, which is the finest, has a small diameter micron count, the micron count. Now this is a long wool. See how the crimp is much bigger? This is rambouillet, which is a type of merino. Do you see how the crimp is so fine you can hardly see it? So the crimp has to do with the diameter of the fiber. The larger the diameter, the more microns the diameter of the fiber, the bigger the crimp is. This is another good one. Spinning. The Spinner's Book of Fleece. What I like about this one is it actually shows the animals that are associated with each type of the fleece. So if you're in, and it has a lot more about the staple, but if you're interested in spinning at all, this will get you into an entire different craft that is just as addicting as knitting. The last one on this topic is the Fleece and Fiber Sourcebook. And this has more than 200 fibers. That means 200 different animals. And it also shows the animals in here. So that's kind of a rabbit hole that you can go down. But it's not like one yarn fits all. You really need to, if you want to, you can study these. Otherwise, you just choose yarns that you like. Now, she asked specifically about a single. Singles tend to pill easily. For short fibers. Merino is a short fiber. If you use the like Blueface Leicester, BFL, it's a longer fiber. So it takes more effort to get the fiber to come out of the yarn and start pilling. So it will pill less. It's personal preference. It's really hard for me to recommend that. If it's going to be like if it's a single, that would be really good for a shawl or something that's going to go over you. If you're going to knit a sweater where there's going to be wearing under your armpits, that's where you're going to get pilling. Or if you carry a purse, or if you wear something over your sweater, you're going to get pilling. So this one is cashmere, silk, and merino, and it has very, very fine pilling on it. I don't know if you can see it. But I've worn this a lot, but it's got a nice tight twist. The thing is the twist. You want to have a twist, okay? So let me put those books aside. This is a book heavy live stream today. Next question. This is from Pinky Inzy. Oh, before I go on, I want to thank Roger. One of the books I'm going to show you today, Roger gifted me, and that was very nice of him. And I like it a lot. I'm going to show you today. This is Pinky Inzy, his name is Kurt. In addition to your question, I have to find guys can have wide shoulders but small chests and biceps, which makes for tricky fitting sometimes. Does it make the neck pull out wider? I noticed there was no across shoulder measurement in your measurement video for ITAG-Yoke. Will that be coming up at a later stage? Well, you can see that I have a set-in sleeve garment. You do need an across the shoulder measurement for set-in sleeves. For a yoke, you do not. And I'm going to go into great detail about that in a few minutes. Okay, so we don't need the cross shoulder. We don't need the high bust because it's just not going to apply in a yoke. This is from Scott. He says, hi, Suzanne. We spoke at Stitches on Friday about a trick you had for doing stranded work, and he wanted me to mention it again. So, like in that little wristlet that you have, or in any garment, I'll use this as an example, where you have a steek. And let's say you're doing Fair Isle, which means you're using lots of different colors. This would just be called stranded or Norwegian, Scandinavian, where they primarily just use two colors. But in Fair Isle, you use lots of different colors, which means you could potentially have a lot of different ends to weave in. If it's going to be steeked, what I do is I spit splice the yarns in the steek area. So this usually takes, to do 7 stitches, will take you about 2 inches, maybe 2.5 inches worth of yarn. So I'll break the yarn here when it's going to change color, start the new strand, and spit splice them together and then work the splice over the steek stitches. Therefore, it hides the splice. It's going to be in the steek, which will be folded back behind your garment. You're not going to see it, and you have no ends to weave in. For example, on my Into the Jungle cardigan, I had like 4 ends to weave in. That was it, because I did all the splicing in the steek. Now, you can't do that on arms because there's no steek, right? You have to actually change the colors and weave the ends in. So that is a great comment. Thank you, Scott, for bringing that up. This is from Nina K. She says, are you going to give us some choices for the yoke sweater? And yes, I am. That's going to come out this week. So I'm going to give you some choices in cables, stranded knitting, lace, and mosaic knitting, and textured, which is like knit purl designs, okay? Hi, Suzanne. Question, can a mosaic pattern be incorporated into the yoke? Yes, it can. That'll be one of the examples that I give you. And then Susan Maloney says, question, what is a Henley? Henley is a style of placket down the front. It's where you're going to have a division here and you make a little button placket. So you have a button band and a buttonhole, and it buttons over it, and it just comes down to about here, and that's it. That's a Henley. Okay, this is from Fiddle Beads. I'm doing really good. I'm going through this really fast. Question, why would you swatch flat for a Henley? Well, if you were going to steek it, you wouldn't need to, but not all designs need to be steeked. So for example, if you were doing cables, you don't need to steek the cables. You would knit this back and forth, and therefore you would be knitting this flat. Does that make sense? If you're doing stranded knitting, you could probably steek mosaic knitting as well. But if you were doing lace, you probably wouldn't want to steek the lace because it's more likely, unless you have a solid area of stitches on either side of the steek that aren't going to come out easily. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. There's plenty of opportunity to knit in the round, but there are also times when you're going to need to knit flat in that area. If you're going to knit flat, you have to swatch flat. If you're going to be knitting in the round, you need to swatch in the round. And for some of you, you're going to have to do both of that because you're going to have some in the round and some flat. This is from Susan Marie. Can you discuss if there are stranded colorwork motifs that are more yoke-friendly compared to others? Yes, that's an excellent, excellent question. So I chose this one because it runs linear this way. And I can actually modify part of this so that I can remove stitches between the top area here. So these are actually closer together. And then I can add stitches down here. So these are actually further apart. So I get the little pie-shaped things going on here. So I chose that specifically because I can do that. So how do you do that? We've used Alice Starmore's charts for color knitting before. You just go through here and you find, oh, I marked one. In fact, this is the one I'm going to use for the example. This is a really good example right here. Do you see they're like flames or flowers? What you can do on these is you can actually, let's say this is the top of your yoke. You remove this completely. You don't have this. Then you have all this area in here where you can have your decreases, your increases top down. And then you can continue increasing across here. So these can be individual little motifs that go around the yoke. They'd be closer together up here, further apart down here. Also, keep in mind that on a yoke, you do not have to have a solid design that goes from here to here like I'm going to have. You can have a series of small motifs, and each motif, which I'll talk about shortly, can fit in its particular area. Okay. This is from Marasaki XIA. Hi, Suzanne. This is my first knit along, but I've been watching the live video for the ITAG cardigan since the beginning. Questions for the ITAG-Yoke. I think I have a cardigan type with stranded color work on the yoke. I'm planning to learn steek for the first time. Do I swatch flat or in the round? In the round would be good for that. Is it possible to steek mid-garment, just the yoke part, with live stitches hanging from needle or scrap yarn? So is it what you're asking is if you would just steek down here and then work the rest flat? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but that's a possibility. Let's say you're going to have stranded knitting just in the yoke and the rest of your sweater is going to be of a solid color. You can work a steek in the yoke, and then when you get to the bottom of the steek, you can divide and work flat, so you're working back and forth like a cardigan. Then when you put your button band on up the front, the steek would fold back and you would just continue the button band up. And that would be, it's a very viable way to do a cardigan with fair isle or stranded work in the yoke. That's very good. Good thinking. You guys are asking really awesome questions. I love this. This is from Hat Lover. I'm planning to make a pullover stranded colorwork yoke sweater for the ITAG-Yoke knit along. For swatching, should I be doing one swatch in the round of the stockinette stitch and a second swatch in the round of the colorwork pattern? That's an excellent question. Yes. So that's why I did this. So I knitted this from here to here. First, I cast on a number of stitches so that I could get equal multiples of my stitch pattern around plus my steek stitches. So I wanted to have, I think I have 3 multiples of my stitch pattern plus the steek, and I cast on that number of stitches and worked for a couple of inches in just a stockinette stitch. Then I added my second color in without changing needle size or anything and added my stranded section. I can see obviously that my stranded section is getting a different stitch gauge than my stockinette stitch section. Can you see that? And this is not blocked or anything yet. So I kind of, went down 1 stitch per inch because I measured this across here and I'm getting like 6 stitches to the inch here and 7. I'm just making this up off the top of my head because I don't remember what it was, but let's say I got 6 stitches to the inch here. Here I got 7 stitches to the inch. That means I'm getting 1 more stitch per inch here than I am here. This is a tighter gauge. There's 2 options for changing this. One is you can use a different needle size. I could go up a needle size to fix this, or I could decrease my stitches, which I did. I removed 1 stitch per inch right here. And now this is the same size as this. This is why it's important to do all of your stitch patterns to swatch them first, because go on Ravelry and look, you'll see lots of sweaters where they have a design in the yoke and right here it puckers all the way across. Just go and look. You'll see them. That means they didn't realize that they have a different stitch gauge between their stitch pattern and their stockinette or whatever they're using for the body of their garment. So you have to look about that. You have to look at that and you have to think about it before you start knitting. It's called swatching. So, and I'll block this. This is going to be my sample for showing you how to steek. This is superwash wool. So a lot of people say you can't steek in superwash wool. Well, obviously I steeked in acrylic for my husband. It's been through the washer and dryer many times. You can steek in anything as long as you secure it properly. This one I'm going to just secure by crocheting the edge. But if I were really concerned about it, I could use my sewing machine to do it. Okay. This is from Tessa A. She says, "Hi, Suzanne. I have a question about determining size based on Anne's Bud book. I'm experienced so as to make all my own clothes. Because I have narrow sloping shoulders, I have found that tops fit better through my shoulders if I choose a pattern size based on my high bust measurement rather than my full bust measurement. This is going to be addressed when we talk more about the yoke. You really don't need to worry about that. And for this sweater, we don't need Anne Bud's book exclusively. We can do most of it just by math. But if you're afraid of math, then you got to use the book. But if math works for you and it's just simple math, you need no directions whatsoever for knitting this yoke other than the guidelines that I give you. And so you don't need to worry about actually the difference between your upper high chest and your bust, okay? But it's a great question. This is Hat Lover. Do you have a favorite book for color work motif inspiration? I use this one a lot. I showed Alice Starmore's. I use this a lot. I have a lot of chart books on charting. You can chart just about anything. You can even just Google stranded knitting charts. You can use cross-stitch charts. You can use any picture. In fact, even online, you can go on and there are graph chart generators where you can put in a picture and it will chart it for you. And you can then figure out the stitch row gauge and you can knit that. You can knit any picture. You can chart any picture. I don't want to drag out all my charting books. It's just too much. It's too overwhelming. But Alice Starmore's is really good. I pulled this one out too because I happen to like Sheila McGregor's book. She has a couple. This one, the Scandinavian, which I mentioned before, Norwegian or Scandinavian, tend to have more motifs rather than, well, here's all over patterns. I'm telling you motifs, but they tend to have, see, here's some motifs. And you can use the motifs in a yoke very easily. In Alice Starmore's book, she has lots of stuff in here. And let's say, so she's got these that go like this, that are going in lines. Those would be perfect to go around the yoke because they'll fit into the little sections. You can also turn them this way. Did you know that? You can use the charts this way. They don't have to just go this way. So any of these charts can be used this way. Here's more. Just pick some of those. I picked a bigger one. I think this is one of these, or version of it is what I used on my Into Jungle cardigan. If it's here's the one. I use this for Starry Starry Night socks, but I modified it. I tessellated it more. This really isn't tessellated. I tessellated mine. But you can get the idea. You can do any of these. This could be done in a yoke. Isn't that cool looking? But you would just do a section of it. And you'll get it more in a minute when I talk about the yokes. I'm almost through the questions. This is from Susan Maloney again. She says, I'm having trouble measuring gauge for my lace yoke. I knitted it in the round. So it's in wedges, no straight to the bottom. And here's her picture. And I got to see it in person. It's really pretty. I would measure your gauge, your stitch gauge across the widest part, Susan. Okay. Just do it straight across there and you'll be fine. Okay, let's see. A couple more, almost done. Okay, I'm done. I did it. There must have been one more. If I missed it, you can ask it next time. Now, I want to go through the yoke with you a little bit about research on it, and then I'll answer your questions over here to the side. So when you research a topic, you look in your books. And I started with Muncie Stanley, the Knitter's Handbook. And I found that she had a whole section in here on motifs. So down here, these are all square and triangular, you know, modular knitting. But down here, she starts talking about in a circle starting in the middle. Can you see that? And it goes on to the next page. This is what I really want to talk about. Do you see this here? This is showing increases every other stitch all the way around on those rows. Now let's think about between that and something like this that's square, that started in the center and worked out. Or one of these that started in the center and worked out. By the time you get to the outside, you have a certain number of stitches. When we did the raglan sweater, all of the increases were in lines like this, right? So you had 2 increases here, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. 8 increases every other row. So the person that figured that out, how that works, was Elizabeth Zimmerman. Let's see if this is, I want the pie shawl. She figured it out with her pie shawl. Okay, this is called Elizabeth Zimmerman's Knitter's Almanac. This is where the directions for her pie shawl are. So do you see the pie shawl starts, and it has a very narrow area. Then the area doubles in width as the stitches double. This one doubles, the stitches double, this one here. Now, what if you took this out? What does that start looking like? It looks like a yoke, doesn't it? That's what a yoke is. A yoke is a circle. It's a flat circle, just like when we were knitting our raglans, and when you got down to this point here, you could lay it out flat and it made a rectangle, remember? It was flat. It's not, it didn't peak up for your shoulders. It just laid flat, because when it folds over your body, that's when it gets its shape. The pie shawl, which is on the cover of her book, does the same thing. So if you just remove the stitches, and this answers Roger's question about the size of the neck, and it can be any size that you want. And then you make your increases. Now, she figured it out, you know, pi r squared, so the radius changes at twice of pi, okay? So, or the square. So if you have a narrow band here, the next one is going to be twice as wide, then this one's going to be twice as wide, and this one's twice as wide, and this is twice as wide. That's where you can fit your design elements in if you want. That's one method. You fit the, and she does that on her pie shawl. See how her design elements fit into the sections? That's one way of putting a design into a yoke. You see that? Another way, and you don't have to stick to this strictly. So if you figure out how many total increases you need to make, as long as they're kind of evenly dispersed, they can be anywhere. When I did my master hand knitting sweater, for level 3 sweater, I did an all over Fair Isle with, this was yoked here, and it just brought the pattern all the way up to here. And I just put them in, I dispersed them evenly through the yoke, but there was no rhyme or reason to them. It was just to make the motifs come together at the top. So the next book after that, so that's the pie shawl, okay? Then Elizabeth talks about yoke patterns, putting a pattern into the yoke. This is Elizabeth Zimmerman's knitting workshop. Here she starts talking about how far you can go between the rounds where you're increasing or decreasing, whether you're knitting bottom down, a bottom up or top down. But I like what she says in here. She says, the yoke, which is a combination of the body stitches plus 2 sets of sleeve stitches. So you've got your body plus your sleeves, minus the underarms, blah, blah, blah. More or less, give or take. We'll not be fussy about an extra stitch or 2. This is, after all, knitting, and knitting is elastic by definition. We'll consider the yoke to be 1 1/3 of the stitches around the chest. This answers some more questions. So people are talking. Kurt was talking about the difference between the size of the arms, the shoulders, and the chest. So a yoke, which is really cool, you can easily adjust the size of the body here to the arms. The arms can be any size, because as you make your yoke, you're just going to incorporate whatever the body needs to be plus what the arms need to be. So for each person, it can be completely different, and it does not need to be some sort of percentage. It's whatever fits your body, and I'm going to help you figure that out. And that's why I had you take some of the measurements that you took. Okay, I have some more books. I've already shown this knitting in the old way. So Priscilla Gibson. So let's see. Elizabeth Zimmerman did that knitting workshop. Let's see. What year was this? 1981. Priscilla Gibson Roberts. This first one came out in, maybe I won't find the year right away. 1985, so 4 years later. And Priscilla Gibson Roberts has this showing the percentages of the yoke. And do you see the different areas there? Again, very similar to what Elizabeth Zimmerman has, and each area gets wider and wider as you increase the stitches. Okay. Then last but not least, well, not last, this is Strange Brew by Emily Wessel. She's Tin Can Knits, and she walks you through a lot of that in here. She figures it out for you. She gives you charts, and you just plug in your numbers, and she figures it out for you. This is really cool if you do not like math. But what I'm going to teach you is actually how to do this without any book at all. We're just going to start with our body measurements, our swatch, our stitch gauge, our schematic, and we'll make a sweater that fits. But this is an excellent, excellent, excellent book if you do not like math. I highly recommend it, because what she does is she compiles all the stuff from all those other books that I just showed you into this book. Okay. That's good for a minute. So that's, I wanted to show you one more book talking about steeks and sewing. This is by Therese Chynoweth, and it's called Norwegian Sweaters, Techniques for Today's Knitters. And in here, she uses her sewing machine for all of her steeks. She also uses a sewing machine for putting in zippers. And I love her, because I use a sewing machine for zippers too. And usually you see everyone recommending putting in zippers by hand. I think they look tidier with a zipper. You just have to learn how to stitch in the ditch between the stitches, and they look just fine. And that's one of the videos that I'm going to have coming up. Okay, enough of that. Now I'm going to answer your questions. Let me move all these books. That was a book heavy episode. Let me go up to the top and start with any questions. Make sure that you had it in all caps so I can find it. Okay. That was heavy duty, I know, but it's a start. Okay. Oh, Anne Tremolio says she bought a bullet journal. I love mine. I'm still using mine. Here's my bullet journal. I love it. I use it every day, all day long. Okay, Claudia Cano. She says, question, if I'm knitting in the round with steek stitches for a cardigan, how should I make the swatch? You knit the swatch in the round. And if you want to put some steek stitches in your swatch, you can, because then you can practice cutting your steek on your swatch. Kind of kills two birds with one stone. Bonnie Davis question. Hi, Suzanne. Is that a garter stitch border on the sweater you are wearing, or what is the border? On here? Yes, it's not garter stitch. It's just I do, a lot of times a pattern will say to do an I-cord edge. And I don't mind I-cord, but it's kind of tedious. So what I do is I just do reverse stockinette for like 2 rows and then bind off purlwise. And it kind of looks like an I-cord edge. And see, I have it around the sleeves too. It gives you that nice rounded look. I also did it on the bottom of the sweater. So it gives you that little round, kind of like an I-cord look. Okay. Nina asks if I've ever done any spinning. Yes, when I was doing the Master Hand Knitting program and I was trying to learn about fiber, guess what? I learned how to spin. I'm not a spinner though. I mean, I have a spinning wheel and I know how to spin, but my first love is knitting. So, but learning about spinning taught me a lot about fiber. That's how I learned about fiber. Okay, Kate Wilson. Question, are you going to send out an email when you start a live chat? It took me 15 minutes to find it today. Actually, you know, I don't have an email list. I don't have any of your emails. What I do is I go onto YouTube and I create the live stream. Like I'm going to be creating one for this coming Wednesday this afternoon, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Don't let me forget. It's very important. And it automatically sends out notification who people who have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Now, when you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you also have to hit that little bell there that says you're going to receive notifications. Because if the bell is not looking like it's dinging, then the notifications will be silent and YouTube will not send you any notifications. They think that you chose not to have notifications. You actually have to turn it on. Right now, as of right before this live stream started, I had about 700 subscribers to this YouTube channel. This is a brand new channel that I created just for the live streams because I think the live streams are annoying to people who want to watch short, quick, to the point videos, which most of my videos are. So I created a new YouTube channel just for the live streams. So you might want to subscribe to both my channels if you want to get the live streams and you want to see the little tutorial videos. It's up to you. It's personal preference. But I do not have an email list and I don't send anybody emails. Okay. Grammy Luli, question, what do you wash your wool socks, sweaters, etc. with? That's a great question. I'm not fancy. I just use room temperature water and like Dawn dish soap, like 1 or 2 drops. That's all. I fill up my sink with the room temperature water. I put a couple of drops of the Dawn dish soap. You don't want detergent. You want soap. Okay. And then I take my hands and I just go like this and swish it around because I don't want bubbles. And then I put my garment in there and I let it sit for at least 20 minutes, but usually overnight. If I'm washing something, I let it sit in there overnight. I never do any agitations or anything. I press the water through maybe once, then I drain the sink. I pull my garment up so that the new water running in doesn't run on my garment. I pull the garment up to the side of the sink, fill the sink back up with room temperature water, lay the garment back out. I don't agitate or anything. Let it sit there for a couple minutes to get the rest of the soap out. Then I drain the sink. I found that works really, really good. Wool, things do not permeate wool. Okay, they sit on the outside of it. So if you get it wet and you put a little bit of dish soap in, which is the water to what's that word where it permeates, allows it to get underneath the dirt and lift it off. That's really all you need to do, and your things will come clean. Okay. This is not my own pattern. This is by Vera Sannon. She's a good friend of mine. She lives over in the desert near me, and she designs most of her garments with fingering weight yarn, which I absolutely love because where I live, it's not comfortable to wear anything heavier. We never get that cold. In fact, today it's probably 70 degrees outside. So I can wear, and this is wool. I love wool. So it's very comfortable. Vera Sannon. She goes by Sun Fun Living. I think Sun Fun Living on Ravelry. Okay. Nina Kellen. Question. Did you do that swatch with 2 circular method that you usually use? Yes, I did this with 2 circular needles. I'm not a fan of using 9-inch or 12-inch or even 16-inch circular needles because for me, I don't like the little itty bitty short needle tips. They're just too short for me. I like the needle to go all the way across my hand because I leverage the needle. And if you have those little short needles, you have to knit like this. And it changes my stitch gauge. Also, if you have to stretch the stitches around the needle to get to knit, it's going to change your gauge. So I prefer 2 24-inch circular needles, or you could use magic loop. I'm just a 2 circular needle girl, so Magic loop never caught on with me. I know a lot of people prefer it over 2 circulars. Either way, in my personal opinion, and it is my personal opinion, you can do whatever you want. I don't care for short needles, short circular needles. Okay, Diana Danko, question. I'm guessing that if the yoke is going to be done in a textured pattern stitch and the body stockinette, you need to swatch both. Yep. That's why I say always buy an extra skein just for swatching, right? Carol Corcoran, question. And her question jumped. Here it is. Never done yoke or color work. Been practicing with yarn in both hands, but I'm very clumsy. Don't feel I can trust gauge on swatch. Should I wait to do color work? Don't know what to do. Do a color work like that's where I like to do socks. Socks are a great practice tool. Or if you're going to do stranded knitting, you could do a shawl or something, a cowl, and where it's knit in a tube. And it's a great way to practice it. And then you can do the sweater. I wouldn't start right on the yoke of the sweater because your gauge will change as you practice. Leslie Dunn, if your pattern needs to be in wedges, does it matter how many wedges you have? My sweater is the one with arrows pointing. I love your sweater, Leslie. I love your sweater. That design is so awesome with the arrows pointing down. It is going to be stunning. And those don't have to have anything to do with the wedges. What comes out this Friday is going to be exactly diagrams for you that you can follow that show from everything we've talked about, from the raglan to the pie to the yoke and the transitions between them and how they're actually the same. The increases are just in different positions, but it's the same number of total increases. So in your case, you do not have to think about wedges. What you're going to have is your arrow designs coming out, and all of the decreases will be in between them. It's not a wedge concept. It's more like what I talked about my master knitter sweater, where I just placed the, I keep saying decreases. I mean to say increases wherever they can fall and still maintain the stitch count. Claudia Rivera, question, is it too late to join the knit along? No, it's not too late. We've hardly started. Everything I've sent out so far has just been preliminary about choosing your yarn, measuring your body, and doing swatches. So we really haven't even started knitting yet. Gisan Peugeot, question, go on Ravelry for my question. I had trouble writing here. Oh, let me go look real quick. I will look. Is it in the question section? I only see one from Jane Socks. Is that you? Are you Jane Socks? Talking about having a stitch gauge that is not in Ann Budd's book. And we will be talking about that. We will be talking about that in great detail. Don't worry about that. It will all work. And there are some people who their size is outside the range of sizes Ann Budd gives. They're either smaller or larger. And I'm going to talk to you about how to fill. I'll show you exactly how to overcome that problem. That is a video that I'm going to be making this week, and it'll come out with the information that you get this Friday. Okay. Let's see. Christina Hattinger, question. Should I knit my colorwork swatch with 3 different needle sizes? What I would do is I would do your stockinette stitch swatch for your body of your sweater first and figure out which size needle you want to use for that. And then you need to either, and then swatch your colorwork with that same size needle. See if you like it. To me, it's easier to change stitch count for a yoke sweater than it is to change needle size. So just try that first. If you like that, like I did with mine, try that. If you like that, because I like this fabric and I like this fabric, I didn't want to change either fabric. I like them both. So I resorted to changing my stitch count, which is actually easier. Okay. Sandra Morin wants to know if the sweater I'm wearing is a pattern on Ravelry. Yes, it is, and I have to look it up. I'll post it down in the comments. Maybe Diana Danko can remind me when she sends me the write-up, okay? Let's see. Kara Urgent says she likes to do two circulars too. It works for me. Carol Corcoran, question. Do you think for this sweater I should do mosaic or texture in weight on color work? That would be cool. Mosaic would be really pretty. I think that mosaic, you could achieve the same type of look, the color work with mosaic as you can with stranded knitting. So try that, Carol. I think that would be really cool. Sandra Morin, question. Oh, no, I did that one. No, your voice is is my voice doing weird things? Let me take a drink of water. Anybody, now it's going to really do weird things. Anybody have any problems hearing me? Okay, Gisan, I'm going to have to look at your question and I'll address it next time, okay? Leslie Dunn, question, does intarsia affect gauge? No, intarsia does not affect gauge unless you change yarn size. But if all the yarns are the same size, intarsia does not affect gauge. Nina Kellen, question, I'm interested in that lovely lace pattern. Could the other viewer post the source of it? Oh, that is for Susan. Susan, can you post the source of your lace pattern? Okay. Everybody said they can hear me fine. Okay. Lorraine Lupolo, question. So I don't have an idea for yoke. So will it be too late to wait till you send out the suggestions to do the swatching for the yoke? No, it's not too late. So if you noticed in the first handout that came out this Friday, I gave you the timeline. So the next section that comes out, we're going to have 2 weeks to work on that before more information comes out. So you have plenty of time to work on the yoke. We're going at a pace that I think most people can keep up with. But also remember, you can work this at your own pace. It's not a race, it's a journey. And if you really want to absorb as much information from this and learn as many skills as you can, look at it as a journey. And so each person will be traveling at their own speed. It's not who finishes first. It's who makes the most beautiful sweater. And all of them will be beautiful. On the ITAG raglan cardigan that we did, they are all stunning. They're unbelievably beautiful. Okay. Before I move on more questions, I want to tell you that this coming Wednesday, I'm going to have a special guest, and that is Arenda Holiday. Arenda Holiday is the head of the organization, the Knitting Guild Association. And she is the main person behind the Master Hand Knitting program. So she'll be on here live. We practiced earlier today and it worked just fine. So it's going to be very cool. On Wednesday, that would be March 4th, 5th, March 6th at noon Pacific Standard Time. You will want to watch it. You can ask questions in my Ravelry group that you can give for her, but you can also questions live here that she'll be able to answer them, okay? Urgent says, question, I loved your corrugated rib so much I want to add that to my yoke. Is a simple 4 repeat okay in a dramatically increasing yoke? Yes. Try it out, swatch it though. Make a little swatch. I think that would be really, really pretty. Really pretty. Now, you don't necessarily need to have knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. You could have knit one color, knit the other color, knit, 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 like we did on the bottom of the socks. Remember how that looked? That's very, very pretty too. Okay, any other questions? We covered a ton of information today, and there will be a lot coming out this Friday. So Francoise, I'm forewarning you, but I'll try to get it to you as early as possible. There will be, Carol wants to know if there's going to be mosaic samples. Yes, there will be mosaic samples. So mainly there's 2 ways that you can do this yoke design with any of the stitch patterns. You can do that looks like a piece of pie. You can do that with cables, like all these little pieces. Or you can do individual little motifs that fit into each section that they don't have to relate to each other in any way. And you go on Ravelry and look at yoke sweaters, and you'll start seeing these things. You'll see the ones that come out like this, and then you'll also see the ones that go around like this. Those are the two main ways to put a design element into a yoke. Okay? So that's your homework. Look on Ravelry. There'll be tons more information coming out this Friday. Be sure to give me a thumbs up here. Don't forget, thumbs up. And subscribe to this YouTube channel, please. And hit the bell so that you get notifications. Also, if you could please share this channel with your friends so I get more subscribers. 700 is not very many. I have like 36,000 on my other channel. So I want to kind of get some of those people to move over here too. And that's all I have to say. It's a ton today. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have lovely weather where you live, that springtime starts coming to you soon. And we'll see you on Wednesday with Arinda Holiday. Oops, hold on. There's a question. This is from Nano Ann. She says, question, I found a colorwork chart. I like it's already charted in a wedge with increases already in it. Can I adjust it to? Yes, you can. Yep, you can do that. Don't forget to hit the like button. That looks like a thumbs up. And we'll see you next time. Happy knitting. Have a good day.